you had a chance to check out some of the live demos going on. It's definitely a great opportunity. My name is Nick Tyndall. I do regulatory affairs for the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, the trade association for the off-road equipment industry. So anything you see on a farm, construction, forestry, utility mining site, it's probably one of our member companies that are producing that product or service. Today's panel is going to be exploring sort of the regulatory world around autonomy. The autonomous agricultural equipment future isn't coming, it is here today. And due to a variety of economic pressures, demographic trends, the sheer momentum of technological progress and the current of history, I think it's safe to say that the ever-increasing adoption of autonomous agricultural equipment will continue, and probably in the very near future, when we hit a catalyst point of adoption and infrastructure enabling systems being put in place, you'll see it really take off like a rocket. But of course, with that, safety is of paramount concern, and the regulatory environment to ensure worker safety is going to play a critical role in that. I can speak for my member companies and know that safety is the top thing they think about when they engineer a product, and they don't put out anything that they wouldn't let their families use on the farm. Because myself and a lot of the people in the industry, we come from farms, and our families are still in that. So we have a great selection of panelists to explore that issue from a variety of angles. And so I will let them introduce themselves and say a few opening remarks, and then we'll just kind of kick some questions back and forth between us. We'll start with you, Christina.
Okay, well, thank you, Nick. So my name is Christina SHUPE. I am the Executive Officer for the Occupational Safety and Health Standards Board. I have been working for the board for about 5 years. Prior to that, I was a director for the Independent Redistricting Commission, which was also a very innovative program. And prior to that, my background is in the private sector. I started out in IT back in the 90s. I've worked for Applied Materials, Apple, Intel, and I did business consulting for 8 years. I came to public service because I saw a real need to move forward innovative programs that would change the way that our government programs work, and an opportunity to make them more effective. Now, I thought that would only be for 6 months. It's been about 13 years. But the challenges keep coming, and so the need is still there. And this automated agricultural equipment, there's so much opportunity here, but it has to be done in a very responsible way. And so that's why I'm grateful that we're having these conversations.
We'll go with Mike.
Michael Miller, California Association of Wine Grape Growers. I'm the Director of Government Relations, and thank you all for coming. I've been with the wine grape growers now for almost 7 years, which surprises me that it's been that long, because this is supposed to be my retirement gig. Before coming here, I worked for 35 years in public policy with in and out of the California legislature, in the Pete Wilson administration, the Davis administration, working leadership positions in the Senate and the Assembly. And I've always had a focus on public policy, which I brought to the wine grape growers. Our big issue around this issue of automation is precision viticulture, sustainability. If you go up and down this valley, the Monterey AVA, you're going to find growers who have invested significantly in sustainability practices. And a large part of that is environmental protection, it's worker safety, it's marketing your product in a manner that is good for the environment and is sustainable in the long term. A big part of that is autonomy. It's the equipment that's available. It's the use of drones, of robotics to find the place in the vineyard where you have a small issue with maybe it's a disease, maybe it's a leaf roll or something, and dealing with it in isolation versus treating the whole row or the whole block or the whole vineyard. And this technology allows for all of that in a very safe manner, and that's why it's so important to us.
And Ben, I just wanted to keep you guessing.
Hey, so first of all, I'm very happy on having this discussion during FIRA, and I'm very happy also to represent, in a way, almost 3 or 4 dozens of companies outside of this hall who are seeking on how to integrate and create capabilities around that deal that we're into. Myself, I think I beat you guys 13 years on your side. I've been 25 years in the Air Force serving as an aviator, but also in the last 10 years of my service, I was in charge of all the unmanned system programs in Israel, anything from 2 pounds to 6 tons. And it was at the time that ground vehicles weren't there, so they said, okay, take that also as your part. Meaning from ideation, it was quite a long time that enabled us from ideation to actual certification of how to bring 6-ton vehicles above Tel Aviv or in other places. So we've seen that for quite a while, and I've been around at unmanned system for almost two decades already. The last 6 years, Blue White, which I founded along with the friends of mine, is dealing with how to create impact through autonomy, how to embrace autonomy in those areas, and how to make sure that we're doing it in, as you said, guys, in a safe way and a long-term procedure that enables us. And what we do, we actually bolt into any type of tractor and transform it to autonomous, understanding that the cost is a huge factor, and we have amazing OEMs who created for the last 2 centuries amazing tractors that are here to stay for quite a long time. And we are taking any type of tractor, transforming it to autonomous in a matter of hours in the assembly lines. And once there we have the ability to operate up to dozens of vehicles in a certain area. So it's different type of tractors, different type of crops, and different type of implements. We focused in permanent crops, where the demand and the amount of labor shortage that we have found it is the highest, and where accuracy is really crucial. So being in environments with no GPS and harsh environments is something, this is our happy place for quite a long time, and the ability to implement it here, this is something that we're doing. And I'm really looking forward for what we will discuss here, basically under my rules of engagement, which are fellowship, love of the land, and innovation on that part. So this is what you will get from me.
Great, thanks. Since this is a regulatory conversation, Christina, why don't you give our audience a kind of a brief overview of where we stand today in the regulation of autonomy?
Sure, and Ben, I have to say I really appreciate your say we're going to do this together nicely, because that really is how the board passes our best regulations. What we do is we have a process in place where we bring everybody to the table. And it's critical that when we're looking at new regulations, we do that from the very beginning. That means we bring labor to the table, we bring the manufacturers to the table, the subject matter experts, and the employers, the folks that are going to be buying these machines. Without that robust engagement, we end up with blind spots, and we really need to avoid blind spots. So right now, we have a couple of different things that we've already done. I like to say there's nothing new under the sun. And having started out in IT, I know that IT people hate that because everything you do is brand new and exciting. But there really is a purpose to not reinventing the wheel. We want innovation, but we also don't want to waste our resources. And so when we're talking about the regulatory landscape specifically, this is not the first industry. Agriculture is not the first industry to see a major ramp up in technology that requires adjustment for regulations. We have a very robust program with the elevator unit. Elevators, if you're not familiar with them, they update the technology on those things every single year. And they're critical to, just the way agriculture is critical to feeding us, elevators are critical to our commercial spaces and building that business infrastructure. We have programs that can be overlaid to our situation here with autonomous ag that would be beneficial. I think I got a little off topic.
No, no, please.
You guys have to jump in more. I'll just keep talking.
We'll do that.
So we don't disagree with that approach, that the regulations have to keep up with technology. The interesting thing about this technology is that it is so different from crop to crop and from the equipment to the equipment, right? So you may have an orchard that's very different from a vineyard. They're both rows, but you also have, a field that's maybe another crop that's growing where it's a seasonal crop. It's just different, right? So how you can apply one regulation to all of that is it's a little bit different than the elevators, right? Elevators go up and down, and yes, the technology changes and all that, but it is very different than applying it here. And the thing about this one too that is unique is that it is changing all the time, to your point, right? It is ever evolving, but it's also in weight of the whole big picture of the universe we live in, right? We want, for us, the wine grape growers, we want a safe environment in our vineyards. So we want to make sure that we're not overusing pesticides. At the sustainable ranking, we have a green, yellow, red ranking of pesticides. You don't use the reds unless you absolutely positively have to. And the greens are predominantly towards the organic end. So we want to encourage that. We want to encourage the least amount of chemicals that you can use. That is in direct relation to how you apply that chemical through this technology. So while an elevator goes up and down, this is applies across a broad spectrum of public policies where there's a benefit to that we have to look all together and say, how do we achieve environmental safety using current technology in a way that is safe for workers? And it all has to be considered in relationship together. And that's what I think is a little bit of the challenge that we have in this arena, because if we look at it just in one section of Title 8 of the Workplace Safety Standards, we're missing the big picture. And that's a really difficult conversation to have because there are so many moving parts, but it's critically important, I think, to our growers.
Yeah.
Well, and before we move off of this point, I think it's really what you said. There's so many different moving parts, right? And that's critical to acknowledge, because I've been here for the last couple of days. There are so many different manufacturers here. There are so many people providing different services, whether it's software, whether it's equipment, small pieces of equipment, large pieces of equipment, and a one-size-fits-all answer would be very, very difficult.
Yeah, I know.
But I think, in a way, if I compare it in areas such as urban mobility, where I was part of legislation level 4 vehicles, or military or mining, and also here, when you see how equipment is being developed, and those companies, not just Blue White, but also others, I mean, they do have a methodology. There is a concept, there's a system engineering behind it, talking about redundancies, talking about the ability to understand what has happened, collect data, having your black box, having the ability to debrief from place to place and to understand what is happening. In our areas, our system engineering is of our machine, and it has almost triple redundancy in any type of area that you have. So this is how you create, even in a non-certification process that is over there, there's enough areas to take from other industries of how to create a good product. And it's not just to get certification clearance. You need a happy client. Okay, and a happy client means that the machine needs to work, and it needs to work safe. Okay, this is bottom line. We can cover ourselves with all kinds of stories around that, but this is one thing. And I think also setting up maybe another notch to this discussion is we are here, all of us, and not just because it's cool tech to work with, because there is a huge need. There's a huge need that we're dealing with around here of, I don't know, we just got information a few days ago, there are 30,000 tractor drivers needed, and there are 15,000 applicants in California. In Washington, it's far worse. In Europe, it's dead. My kids don't know how to press a clutch, okay? I don't know who knows how to drive a tractor. So it's not just driving a tractor, it's also doing it correctly. So the need part is huge.
And I don't disagree with that, but I would call that, I would refer to that more as labor change.
Yep.
And that's why it's so vital to engage with labor representatives in this space. Because while you still want a happy client, we also want a safe workplace.
I'm so happy that you raised it. First of all, we have almost 50 workers here in California. And we have Alejandra, who finished Fresno State, and she is now in charge of all the autonomous operations in Washington State. And she wouldn't have a chance to have almost, I don't want to share exactly the numbers, but let's say a 6-figure salary ever if she wouldn't have got this opportunity. And the idea of making a complex engineering, and a lot of engineering and algorithms and AI and all those crazy words behind it, the product itself is very simplified. People invested in me around $5 million just to take off and land, and believe me, I did all the mistakes ever, it was me. And we transformed it to 18-year-old boys and girls in 3 weeks, learning how to do everything from an air-conditioned van or office, and creating the capability. You don't need to be, if you know how to play NBA 2024 or FIFA, you know how to work with that one. So this is the idea of how to simplify things and create opportunity.
So I want to piggyback on both of those statements a little bit. One is I don't want to miss the opportunity to absolutely thank Christina, the board, and your board members for being here. I mean, if you're looking at the future of this issue and how to get where things need to be, that recognize the technology today and the ongoing development of technology in the future, the only way that we really understand the issue is actually by meeting with the manufacturers. And thank you for being here as well. And thank you to AEM for putting all this together, and to FIRA. But that is how we actually come to some consensus on really, one, understanding what the technology is. 2, what the applications are. 3, how do we make sure that it's safe and works for everyone's benefit? And to the extent that we want to make sure that we bring in labor organizations and have conversations with them, I think by all means, absolutely, we need to do that. However, I have one caveat with that. If the conversation is going to only be about job protection, right? About we want to make sure that we're not losing jobs to technology, there's a conversation to have about that. We think that, frankly, we're actually developing jobs, because I think every grower you talk to in this area will tell you that a lot of people don't want to do this work. It's hard work. If you're doing the manual ag labor work, it's hard work. If you can help make it easier through technology, more people are going to want to do that job. On top of that, if you give them a skill that allows them to grow in the industry and to advance with that employer in the industry and actually transfer to other industries, you're going to create more of an incentive for people to come into the industry, creating job growth. But in the big picture too, if the conversation is only about job protection to the point that worker safety is a secondary issue, that is something that we have a hard time with, because we fundamentally believe that this equipment creates a safer workplace. And our employers believe, by all means, they can best serve their employees through use of the safest equipment possible. And to the extent that we need to work on the regulations to fix that and address that, that's what they want me to do. And that's kind of, I think we're all in agreement with those issues.
But we are talking about it. I think and it's not just talking about it, it's also, it's a long-term process. It's not going to happen.
Right.
We are in a decade, something between a decade or 2 of evolution. 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I sat in coach on a cross-Atlantic aircraft, and people smoke near me, okay? And think today, is it is it okay that we have this discussion and people are smoking here and this is like, oh, it's outrageous. Okay, I don't know how many of you guys drove with an open tractor mowing at 120 degrees or herbicide with a PPE for 10 hours in the sun. And these are things that there is a reason we are not regulating and saying, hey, it's crazy that we're doing it, because there is no other alternative. There is no, so go ahead, Nick. So.
Yeah, something I wanted to pose to you, Christina. I'm reminded that the USDOL Department of Mine Safety and Health back in 2019 declared that a piece of equipment that is remotely monitored is not considered unattended, because an unattended piece of equipment, that the wheel locks in, it's completely shut down. And at the same time, you have a conversation with an airline pilot that my brother had one with a gentleman that flies Chicago to Tokyo, and in that flight, he's actually flying the plane less than 15 minutes. And one of the biggest issues the airlines have is keeping pilots engaged, because they're just bored out of their mind because there's nothing for them to do. And so I kind of pose it, is the safest work environment one where the people are just on that perimeter, they're not in the bowl of hazards?
Well, it's interesting you bring up pilots, because we have a well-acknowledged pilot shortage going on right now, right? Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing is the requirements for pilots 10 years ago were significantly stricter than they are now. Yep. The personal story, my sister's a flight attendant, and she flies darn near every single day. And we've gone from pilots who had a minimum of 10 years of experience and 3,000 hours up in the air before they're allowed to fly commercial. Now we've got 24-year-old kids with 500 hours.
Yep.
And that is what happens when there's pressure on a system.
I agree.
And part of our role as a regulator is to make sure that the pressure on the system doesn't result in injury. It doesn't result in increased hazards for our workers. There's always a lot of pressure in an innovative space, because there's pressure to get to market. Mm-hmm. There's a pressure to be first, to be better, to be more marketable. And I saw this myself when I started out my career. I've frequently said that the quality control dropped dramatically as the market pressures increased. And what we're looking for in California is a long-term solution. We're looking for something that will meet the needs of this new work environment, that will allow farmers to be successful, that will allow manufacturers to put a safe product out, because, Ben, I wish everybody was committed to safety the way you are. But we all know that there are good actors and bad actors.
No, I totally agree that it should be monitored and should be transparent. And yes, there will be, for sure, just like in any society, people who cut short or take the wrong corner, and this is why we need to look at it. I'm very glad that the ecosystem itself knows what it should get in a way. So it's a healthy ecosystem, meaning growers are not willing to accept safety and hazards. They had enough of that. So in a way, I think the ecosystem, and also the ecosystem of developers, the AAM, you guys, we are talking, and everything is, this is the way to do it. So this is how I'm looking at it. It's not just California. I'm looking at myself as a global company. I do feel that California, in a lot of places, is a compass for others, and this is why it's a good thing. But we also see that others are in pressure just to run and do it fast. So in a way, to wait for, okay, so what should be the development that is needed? Or what should be, should I put a black box or not? I have a black box, okay? Because I think it should have. But should we have a black box or not? Just let's start talking about, because time is of essence. I am optimistic that we are doing it in that way. And so this is what I have on that part. So I think we are totally in agreement in that area. If we'll see what happened in mining and automation as an example. Mining used to be the most hazard place, and now ag took first place in a way, because we see the big companies embracing more and more automation. Automation creates safety, okay? We don't buy a car today without ADAS of some kind. We just don't buy it. And moreover, the regulator said you cannot create a car without ADAS capability. So I believe we are approaching there. It's not something to be a pioneer, whether it's from the government, whether it's from as an entrepreneur, or even as a client. It's not for people who are risk adverse. Okay, and we need to deal with it. Okay, it's our shift to deal with it.
So I think also in this whole conversation, you have to have a bit of a view of a risk assessment, right? So what is the risk, right? So we look at it with our partners in Fresno State, Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, UC Davis, other schools, community colleges as well. They're already looking towards the future of ag and how they need to train their students to meet the demands of the future workforce. So there's already some move already going to make sure that people are prepared to operate this kind of equipment, and that they are well positioned to have a career in agriculture. You know, my daughter, she's 14 years old, 8th grade, she's studying American history. And last night I was helping her prepare for a test that she has tomorrow, and we were going through some things, and one thing that just jumped out to me was at the Battle of Lexington, I believe it was, or maybe it was Yorktown, how they described it was they described the colonists made up mostly of farmers, right? Fought the British in a bloody battle and helped turn the war and created independence for this country. The time when farming was revered and people really wanted that is different now. In public policy discussions in Sacramento, there's a bit of a stigma that we all suffer in agriculture. People look at the bad actors, and there are bad actors, there's no question about it. But a lot of policymakers look at the bad actors as the norm versus the exception. And so we constantly have to work hard at making sure that people understand what real agriculture is, and what you all do for a living, and what you contribute to not only your communities, but to the state, the country, and the world. And part of that too is working with the future of ag and making sure we have people coming into agriculture and embrace it in the generational way that you do. And I think that's just a critical part of the conversation. But in the risk assessment part of it, it's when you look at the risk in a vineyard, in a orchard, is very, very different than if you're looking at an autonomous taxi on the streets of San Francisco, or if you're looking at a big semi-truck rolling down I-80. That's a very different conversation. And we're not weighing in on that, and that's not the part of the conversation today. But in doing the risk assessment of what is needed, that has to be part of it, right? A tractor going 2 miles an hour in the controlled environment of a vineyard where nobody is there except the tractor is very, very different than a semi-truck with a 10,000-pound load going down Interstate 80 at 70 miles an hour. That's just a different conversation, and we need to recognize that in how we do the risk assessment.
And Nick, if you don't mind, I mean, you're right on with the risk assessment, but it's critical to not be making those risk assessments without a full picture. A 360-degree picture. And so what we saw in mining and tunneling in California is that the successful construction managers have introduced automated mining and tunneling equipment, but they've done so in partnership with the folks that are working in that environment to help identify those risks and mitigate them.
And you see that it works differently in ag, or this is how we do it?
No, I think that it's absolutely critical for that to be a piece of our risk assessment for ag, for automated equipment in ag.
We need to open up the audience here for questions, but I'll just kind of make 2 points of, if we brought up mining and some other things. We can say that I believe it's around 90 million miles have been traveled with autonomous mining trucks, and there hasn't been one single human loss of time due to injury or anything of that nature. And as I view it, ultimately, autonomy is just another tool in the toolbox, and bad actors will abuse whatever tool they have in the toolbox, and that's why they need to be held accountable by such agencies as yours.
Yep.
So let's go. We need to get to the audience for questions.
Let's do that.
Just raise your hand, and if Christina, if you could point them out for me, since I cannot.
We have one.
Okay, great.
I'm glad you guys can see.
Sir.
I do see a hand in the
At
back.
the back.
Do we have a microphone?
Is anybody there? Is that? Ah, sorry. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm Emily Bryce, and I'm with the California Department of Pesticide Regulation. I had a question. I have been following AgTech for a while, and something that is a challenge for me as a regulator is not seeing a lot of standardization in this industry when it comes to things like safety features. So as an example, I think about like an anti-lock brake system. They're vastly different from vehicle to vehicle, but we know it's required as a safety feature, right? So it makes it a little easier from a regulatory perspective. And I'm seeing equipment like, these small platforms where you can hack the platform, you can add a sprayer to it, you can add a boom to it and spray pesticides or take it off, and then suddenly it falls under my jurisdiction or it doesn't. So one of the questions that I have is, how can regulators work with industry to keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening? I know we have ISO standards that are coming out. I've seen those ISO standards. They're not required by law in the US. They are in other countries, so that's another challenge. But small startups may not be aware of those standards even. So how can we, as regulators, kind of connect with industry to ensure that we're aware of the different technology that's out there, of technology coming down the pipeline, and of what safety features are built into that technology?
Actually, I'll take this one because safety is one of AAM's core functions, and we have a variety of technical committees where they get together and talk about creating ISO standards for all sorts of different things. And I think the best way is for people like you to connect with people like me, so I can tie you into those technical committees, and we can have sessions where we bring in all kinds of different brands and talk about safety and how we would do things, what we have coming, and you can bring up your concerns, and you might bring up something that does need a standard and to be fixed, and I've seen it where then we go and do that.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. We are part of the AAM, and this is how we get the information. We do go through certain ISOs. For saving also, we saved around 82,000 gallons of pesticide on 5,000 acres of work just in the last 2 months. And so the opportunity over there is huge. The ability what to cope, I think you're spot on, and that we shouldn't, it's okay to invent, but we shouldn't invent standards. So we should see what are the possibilities over there. So it's also for Christina and I guess your team. We're talking about that a lot.
Well, and this is kind of the other side of your question, which is directed, I think, more towards Nick and Ben. But I think everybody here in this room should know that Cal OSHA has a really robust consultation program as well. Yep. When we're talking about these smaller pieces of equipment that you can hack, that you can change for your specific need, for some employers, there's going to be the question, have I overstepped? Is this going to move me into a citation zone? Cal OSHA has a consultation department that you can call, and we'll absolutely come out and talk to you about it.
Okay. Any other questions?
I don't see any hands.
No, we don't see.
Okay. Well,
but if it's okay, Nick, I would be happy to just say that we're also working with AgSafe, which is also a great to work with, and also with F3, talking about how to create new jobs and what is really, what intrigues, whether it's students or potential workers to work, and what makes them fearful of working in ag. And this is something that we work a lot with them, and I also recommend anyone in the industry just to join hands with those groups or Fresno State that we work in Central Valley. There are a lot of people that are just eager to support, and not just Kalosha and the AM. And we find everybody very attentive to that one.
Yeah, and I'd also want to just say, I know this area has a lot of wine grape growers. If you're a member of COG, feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm totally available to answer any questions you have about the regulatory environment and how we can help you and work as a liaison with the regulators and represent you. If you have other commodities, we work very closely with the Farm Bureau, Western Growers, and others as well. We're all on the same page on this issue, and I encourage your engagement. The more we as associations hear from you about what you need for technology, what you need for the future to keep you going, it's something that I need to hear. I was talking to a grower this morning down the Central Valley. He had been in business for 100 years. His next generation, his kids, are about to take over the farm. He grew grapes, he had an orchard, he did some row crops, he did a bunch of things over the years, and he's very afraid that his daughter, who's going to be taking it over, is going to basically be the last generation of his farming. I mean, I grew up in the Midwest. My uncle had a farm in South Dakota. I worked every summer, in his farm, driving a tractor at 13 and 12 years old. Don't tell anybody. It was probably illegal, but we did it because that's what you did in South Dakota in the 70s. So I have a personal affection for the industry, and I encourage you to stay involved and be active. We need to hear from you.
Christina, any kind of closing remarks?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that really attracted me to the Standards Board initially was its values. This board, our board members are here today, our staff are here today. They're building a body of knowledge around this. I think that a lot of time government gets a bad rap for being folks in an ivory tower who are not educated about what's going on in the real world, boots on the ground. And this board in particular it's made up of not just management, but also labor representatives, and also occupational health and occupational safety. And when we say we encourage people to come to our board meetings, we encourage you to engage, and we encourage you to reach out and talk to staff. When we pass regulations in California, these are laws. And we in particular at the Standards Board know how critical it is to make sure that they work, that they're feasible, that they're reasonable, and that they're enforceable. And we do that by engaging with you.
Great, thank you.
May I ask a question?
Oh, yeah, please, we have
sure.
time.
Well, I hear a lot of talk about collaboration, interest, evolution in technology and information, but at the end of the day, the way the Standards Board works is to eventually set up an advisory committee with both management and labor representation. If one were to identify the labor representation for the Standards Board Advisory Committee, who would that be, since there are a lot of players in this field?
I'd recommend working with the California Farm Worker Foundation. Obviously, we'd work with anybody in labor on this issue. We wouldn't exclude anybody. We wouldn't feel that we'd want anybody excluded, but I think you want a group that is predominantly focused on worker safety, and that's got to be the job one part of the conversation. So I wouldn't really exclude anybody, but I think we all need to be focused on worker safety in those conversations. That's all I would want to add to that.
Maybe if I could just add
Yeah,
my
briefly.
closing remark on that one is that, first of all, I'm very humble and also blue-white humble on playing such a role in a world that is really changing and being part of it. And I hope everybody is excited about what we are really doing here, all of us together. Transparency, fellowship, integrity are crucial in order to process and grow forward, all of us together. And also, on a note, robotics can make agriculture sexy again, but I think it can also make agriculture safe again. So this is how I look at it.
Yeah, and in conclusion, I'll end on something that has nothing to do with safety. And that for my personal excitement about this technology is just what it can mean for diversity and inclusion. I mean, the only reason I can do my job today is because of the technology on my iPhone that was developed, not far from here.
Yep.
I actually had a member of Congress, it was an awkward moment, point out to me that in his day, the only job a blind person could have was selling pencils off the street. And running my family farm is simply not an option for me. It's just not possible. But in the future, almost regardless of your physical abilities, you probably will be able to be a farmer. And to me, that's personally exciting. I think it's going to open it up to all kinds of people that even grew up in a city, because to your point, it's sexy. It's something people will want to do, and something people, regardless of their abilities, will be able to do. And so with that, please help me thank our panelists for all their great information.
Nick, can I say one more thing really quick?
Yeah.
Nick, I have one more quick comment. As we mentioned, all of us work with the board extensively on a variety of issues, and I have a personal comment to make. Christina SHUPE is leaving the board and going to work in a new position in the Central Valley. I have known Christina in my position for 7 years now, or whatever it's been, working on this issue and other issues, and I've always found her to be a person of great integrity, upright honesty. We don't always agree. We frequently don't agree, and that's okay. But the thing is she does her job well. She serves her board. Most importantly, she serves the public. And I personally want to say thank you for your work, and you will be missed at the board. Give her a round of applause.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. What he neglected to tell you was that I'm not going very far. I'm going to the water board. So you'll still see me around.
So nothing controversial. Okay, good.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.